So this is the Khoodeelaar television channel broadcasting under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. This is timed at 1640 hours GMT on Saturday, 15th of July 2023. This is 15th of July 2023, which is the 15th of July 1989. So it's 34 years ago today, exactly. Saturday, 15th of July 1989, when the biggest physical attack on the Bangladeshi community peacefully protesting against the police role in not taking any action at that stage against the murderers who had murdered Mr. Esmoth Ali and severely injured his close relation, Mr. Watir Ali, in an attack carried out on them in their flat in the Flower and Dean Walk. The Flower and Dean Walk is not a long walk, it's a short space, but it's situated behind Brick Lane on the same side as the Brick Lane Mosque, a couple of hundred yards, I think, or so from the Brick Lane Mosque side. And this attack took place during the night of Sunday, the 9th of July, 1989. And preliminary information that I got at the time wasn't very conclusive as to what was the circumstance or how the attack took place. And I didn't know Mr. Esmoth Ali or Mr. Watir Ali. And I didn't know any of his or their other relations. And there was nothing that I could find. Checking the general internal community network in the Bangladeshi community, verbal network, because 1989, way before the internet and any accessibility by the internet wasn't available. Somehow I had heard about the rally that was to take place at the Altab Ali Park on the 15th of July 1989, a protest rally, and I didn't know who had organized it or what was the main agenda. So the rally actually took place at the very spot where I had spoken to the television station, London Weekend Show station, London Weekend Television program called London Weekend Show. A few days after Altab Ali had been murdered, 11 years before that. So when I arrived there, I didn't know who was controlling the proceedings. But I was met with a smiling Mr. Kholamia. Now, Mr. Kholamia has died since then. I have recently come to know that he has passed away. Mr. Kholamia came from the Dhaka area in Silot, and by a wider extension of the family, he was related to me. But that was not why he greeted me. He greeted me by saying that any success for a protest would greatly be enhanced if I was allowed to address the gathering, which wasn't very large at that point. But whoever he spoke to apparently said no. Now, who are these people? Of course, they don't exist. Because what Mr. Kholamia was saying was based on his observation, particularly during the 1980s, of my role as a governor at the Stepney Green School, where he was a governor, the parent governor, and I was a Labour Party nominated governor. I was a school governor on 4 schools. And Stepney Green School became the main focal point because of the attack. The attack, nearly deadly, murderous attack on a Bangladeshi boy by a racist boys at the school. I shall come to the Stepney Green School and the attack on the Bangladeshi boy that took place between 1980 to 1982. Probably his name was Maruf, but we shall come to that in another program. Anyway, Mr. Kholamia remembered that the governor's meeting, where I was unanimously proposed and seconded to chair the meeting. I wasn't the chair of the governing body, but it was decided that I would chair the meeting. So when I began chairing the meeting, now people who may be watching this may not realize just how deep my constitutional law advocacy records actually extend and how wide. To this day, constitutionally, legally, face to face, any role that I have played has remained unbeaten by the other side. And I have to remind anyone who is watching this for the first time that the late president and late prime minister of Pakistan post 16th of December 1971, a man called Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto visited Dhaka, then East Pakistan, in the 1960s. So between 1967 and 1970. And I defeated Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, to put it simply. If I had not defeated him, I think the Awami League would not have existed in the way that they were able to exist since then. Again, the correlation and the connection between my defeating Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and the very survival of the Awami League in the 1960s will be again updated in due course. Suffice to say that Kholamia knew that it would not be possible for anyone else to create the awareness at the rally about the rights of the community, and as persuasively as he believed I could do. I did not ask him, but he did, which is not a new thing to do. But whoever was allegedly behind the rally or organizing the rally said no to Kholamia, and Kholamia came to me wearing a face that was reflecting of his disappointment, to put it mildly. And he said in a resigned sort of voice They have moved to Kitahoroin. Now, obviously, Kholamia knew that the rally would be followed by a disaster because these people had no idea as to what they were doing, according to him, because he had been at the Altab Ali Park before I arrived, and he knew the people in terms of the community awareness as well as I did. But I didn't need to be a speaker. I never need to be a speaker at any place because what I have to say doesn't depend on an audience. What is far reaching and far more significant than anything that an audience can confer, which is one of the reasons why the Facebook account, the Khoodeelaar Facebook account, we have been rejecting requests for friends, etc., etc. Which is why this broadcast is not geared to link to any measure counted by numbers of people watching. It doesn't matter. We are publishing full stop. And anyone who is interested in searching, looking for the evidence of what we say, can find it. We have no emotional deficit that somebody will have to be competing with thousands of people watching. It does not make any difference whatsoever. So I followed the other members of the Bangladeshi community in solidarity, despite the fact that they wouldn't let me speak. That was not a consideration for me. So we went marching, and I was taking pictures, as I always do. And by the time we arrived past the place where the Turin Street thing is it, going east in the Bethnal Green Road, people were beginning to murmur from the demonstration. There's some that the police were picking on young persons in the march, in the procession. And by the time we came parallel to the Tesco shop, Tesco Metro, I think, or Tesco Express, whatever it is, in the Bethnal Green Road, going east. At that point, it wasn't far before the march reached or would reach the then headquarters of the Bethnal Green Police Station, Metropolitan Police. So somebody came to me and said, whatever they said, effectively, well, I can't remember the exact words, but the effective message was that we have to do something because they have quite a number of boys, and there will be problem because other people are getting agitated. Now, all the political actions that I have led, and this goes back 60 solid years to 1963, I have led actual student demonstrations outside schools. For example, near Biani Bazar, place on the river Kuyara, Kudar Bazar School. I think it was probably 1961, 62, 63, whatever. It was the demonstration that we took out from Sundarpur in solidarity with the head teacher and I think the teacher that had been attacked by a magistrate in Silot or similar. And everyone proposed that I lead the action and give the order. So when we arrived at the school outside the Kudar Bazar High School, I decided, on the consent of the people that had volunteered, their consent and support for my leadership, I said that whatever I said, that we should be demanding them to come out. I mean, the students did come out. Similar thing happened not far long after that or around that time. From Dahadukin School, we went to Badashore School, High School. And before we did that, I think I led the campaign in Dahadukin, and we had a complete shutdown of the shops in Dahadukin. The whole Dahadukin market was shut down, lockdown as it is nowadays known. That was 60 years ago. So when we arrived at the Badashore School, again, with popular consent behind me, I ordered the students of the school, the Badashore School, which was in session, that is, they were working as a working session in the school. So we had to do that. So therefore, when we arrived at the junction between the Bethnal Green Road and the Wilmot Street, and opposite there was a pub called the Sun Pub in the Bethnal Green Road, not far from the minicab company. And there was real physical animation among many of the people participating. There was real great frustration at the police arresting people for protesting, against the background that the police had not arrested the murderers of Mr Esmoth Ali and the murderous attackers on Watir Ali. Because Watir Ali died few months later, probably a month or a year later, from the same injuries. So I quickly had to decide how to maintain the tempo of the demonstration without getting it diverted into confrontation with the police. Because by definition, any physical confrontation by civilian people with armed police or organized state agents was bound to be an unequal and confrontation. That would be irresponsible on the part of anyone who would allow these civilian unarmed people to be attacked by a state force or forces. To our knowledge, there were three types of state forces, British state forces there. One was the regular London Metropolitan Police Force, and they were reinforced by the Territorial Reserve. And there were, of course, the plainclothes force that was the spying backup. We didn't have anything like that kind of elaborate disguise. We were just all plainclothes people, civilian people. So I took over the microphone. Whoever was carrying the microphone, there was nothing coming out of the person who was speaking. So I decided to peacefully make the statement that we would peacefully sit down and we would do that in support of our peaceful, lawful demand that the police let go, release the people that they had already arrested. And what I said was immediately observed by the people participating, and the people sat down in the middle of Bethnal Green Road, which immediately caused the blockade. There was no traffic that could pass through the Bethnal Green Road. Whatever the length of time we were sat there, no traffic could pass. And in my recollection, there would have been about 200 directly armed or semi armed organized members of the Metropolitan Police and the Territorial Reserve. And they mounted an attack without any warning. They did not tell me because they could see, everyone could see that I was leading the actual peaceful protest event. So it would have been legally absolutely perfectly reasonable and due for the police to talk to me, but they didn't. I looked around and I wanted to see if I could identify anyone that I could remember who had been at the Altab Ali Park as at the beginning of the procession as the leader of the organized protest against the police behavior in not arresting the murderers or the murderer. I couldn't see them. I couldn't see them, but if I did see them, there was no assertive presence by the individuals. I mean, among the people present on the sidelines, literally, not in the middle of the Bethnal Green Road sitting among the sat down protesters, but standing as if they are aloof. They wanted to maintain the difference so that they could tell the authorities, the police and the territory, whatever, that they were not participating in the blockade. Who are the people? Whoever was or were the quote Bangladeshi based political leaders, a few of them were there. But they didn't want to speak, they didn't have anything to say, and they didn't have the courage or the honesty to own up and to support us, support me. Nobody came and said, we are doing well, let's carry on, etc., etc. So suddenly the police attacked us, and this was happening in the afternoon of today, like 15th of July 1989, Saturday. Now, I had no idea what the police were planning to do, but studying the police attacks on peaceful protesters in the Western countries, it is quite clear that the idea was to go any distance to injure the participants if they didn't kind of disperse. The many people ran away, as happens, and about 50 of the demonstrators were actually arrested at that count at that point. So if there are 50 and let's say another 50 or 100 run away, there would have been quite a few hundred people there by the time we sat down there. It is my estimate. Because at that point I was not longer taking pictures, I was not able to carry a camera or anything. I was most concerned about controlling the demonstration in accordance with the plan to express our demands peacefully and clearly, visibly, and without any harm coming to any of the demonstrators or anybody else. Now, the outrage among the comparatively younger members of the demonstration was aimed at the people who had organized the protest in the first place. Not condemning the police as much as they were condemning those leaders, whoever those leaders were. And two or three young people came. We are going to Fournier Street and we are going to burn down the welfare house. Now, when they said that, I said, well, that would be very wrong because it's completely beyond a calculation that should happen. And main purpose was going to be dissipated and it's going to be a deviation and it would do damage to the community. And so I decided to stick together with these three or four young persons as we walked away from the Bethnal Green Road into the Cambridge Heath Road and walked up to Whitechapel Road and we walked towards Osborne Street connecting to Brick Lane. And we went past whatever we went past and we arrived in Brick Lane itself. And then somebody suggested that there was a space where we could meet in Danbury Street. We met, and the meeting lasted, I would say, about at the most, because there was no, I wasn't taking any notes or anything. So there was no note taking because we were all emotional and we were very upset that the police had not let the ones that they initially arrested go free. Instead, that more. That was an act of aggression by the police that I have not been able to update on in terms of open public remembrance and because of other things that have been going on. And in the essay length updates, we shall be coming to that in due course. Things that have been happening since 1989 kept me busy. Other things that have been happening. And all of those things have been about the defense of the community against the various aspects of the attacks by the local council, by the central government legislation, and by other elements, including elements that were, and I believe still are, in operation among the Bangladeshi community, although they carry the British passports. Many of the Bangladeshis living in the United Kingdom are full-time agents, that is to say, spies for Bangladesh-based political operations. A significant number of those are operatives operating on behalf of the regime in control in Bangladesh now. So those are the factors that were in my mind, and I thought now how to proceed, because these agents and these cowards who organized the event and have disappeared now, exposing the people peacefully participating in the protest to be attacked and arrested. So we expressed our frustration over say 90 minutes or so, I think. And then there was a date we heard on which the ones that are charged among the people who had been arrested and charged would be produced before the Thames Magistrates Court. I didn't know anything about any of these people's names or whatever, because somehow mysteriously the ones that were in contact with the police kept me out of it. I mean, that is natural, because they knew that if they had allowed me any information, then I would be doing things that would sabotage their collusion and collaboration or whatever. This always happened. And I didn't need them to tell me. I was working with the now deceased former Bangladeshi councillor on Travellers Council, Shahabuddin Bilal. So we created a banner in support of the arrestees and posters and things, and we appeared outside the Thames Magistrates Court. I also issued statements to the local English language newspaper, the Docklands Recorder, Neom Recorder, whatever was, and they actually published the news. And it was the initial appearances that were used as the process appearances. And then there were several hearings staged at the Wells Street Magistrates Court, Thames Court again, and then later Wells Street Magistrates Court, and then Horse Ferry Road Magistrates Court. Now, the interesting thing about all of that is that I had not been responsible for the demonstration in the organizing bit. And yet I was indirectly left to defend the community, to keep the demands alive, as the sit down showed. And still, none of the people who might have been involved in the original conception of the demonstration contacted me. And this is 34 years later, and they still have not contacted me to even say that they remember what happened. Think about that. 34 years later, I haven't heard from them. But what did I do? I got all the charges dropped against all the people that had been arrested. I got all the charges dropped. Now, this is not some kind of minor event. 40 plus people were charged with public order offenses, and I alone had the charges dropped. How did I do that? Nobody came except one time outside the Wells Street Court, which I shall be talking about another time. I was demonstrating on my own, single handed demonstration outside the court. It's my word? No. It's on tape. The BBC News carried the news items on several days of the demonstrations. So you can see that there is nobody else there. Only one time there was another one. Who was there? That person was the minicab driver that I had hired the minicab to go there. And you could not find another person to hold the other end of the banner. So the minicab driver held one side of the banner and I held the other side. And somehow we managed to get the action pictured. And it's in the newspapers. So this is something that happened, never happened In the 100 years or so since the Silotis settled, because I had extended relations who were already in London in the 1920s. Of course, before my birth. I mean, I wasn't born, but they were there in the 1920s. So, more than 100 years ago, I had relations that were defending the community, helping the people, largely limited number of people, of course, compared to today's demography, the size of the population, the number of people there were very small. But starting from that time, nothing like this had happened. The Bangladeshis have become known as the Bangladeshi community in the British political context by political actions, the major political actions that are connected with the Bangladeshi community in the UK. Remember what I'm saying. All of these have been organized by me, not connected with any political party or grouping in Bangladesh or the spies operating from the soil of Britain on behalf of the masters and mistresses based in Bangladesh. This is a completely different entity. I have been creating the Bangladeshi, overseas Bangladeshi political entity and identity. It's not because I've been sitting in the somebody's house or restaurant gossiping. It's out in the street. So Mr. Esmoth Ali would not get any justice. Mr. Watir Ali would not get any justice because nobody is bothered about campaigning for them. They would come like Altab Ali, complete fraudsters trying to make a name for themselves in a most bizarre and stupid way by inventing an author. Now, where do you begin to talk about Altab Bishash's author? It's more than ridiculous. You cannot cry and you cannot laugh. It is that ludicrous and stupid. When I responded to the attacks by the Territorial Army, and I decided to give up whatever else I could have been doing for me, I did that for the whole entirety of the Bangladeshi community. And where were the leaders? Where are they? 1989, come on, 89, 90. That was the year before the first large number of Bangladeshi backgrounded people became elected councillors. What did they do? Any record? Any record on Hrs Council connected with any of those newly elected councillors expressing any interest about the well-being of the people that had been arrested and were undergoing criminal prosecution at the time? I don't see there was any. And it is not an exception, it is the pattern. Because when Altab Ali was murdered, the racist local MP then, Peter Shore, Peter Shore is the Siloti word for swine. Peter Shore decided to have an imperial sitting in the Toynbee Hall. He decided that there would be compliant individuals, including Mr. Tayyibur Rahman, a travel agent, who would attend a briefing that he would address, and everything would be fine. That was after Altab Ali's murder. Unexpectedly, I arrived, and the minute I sat down around the table, Peter Shore, he thought that he had to get me to leave. I mean, amazing, isn't it? He said, I don't think it would be necessary for Mr. Haque to be there. I mean, did I depend? Did my life, my career depend on that? Of course not. But what I wanted to test, which I did do, was the reaction of the servants, the slaves. None of them said a single thing. So when Alok Bishar says that he has been writing the history of the campaign after Altab Ali's murder, does he have any idea that this meeting took place? Does he know how many authoritative, definitive letters and comments I have written, and things that were taken very seriously by the UK government? There is no counting. And Peter Shore would never be able to write a tenth as effectively as I can write and I have been writing. Peter Shore or Ian Mikado or anybody else, member of parliament, whatever. So when this series of prosecutions of the 40 plus Bangladeshis was underway, not a single other person came forward. Now, I said this on the record. If there is any record that somebody else came forward, I asked them to identify themselves by giving date, chapter, and verse as to what they did, and where they did, and with what effect and what result. And did they see me outside the court or in the court? Because I was there in the courts, I didn't see any of them. Effectively, the representation that I made to the courts directly, to all the courts, quite apart from the demonstrations, and the statements that I made to the BBC and others, clearly established the strength, the legal strength, the constitutional law strength, and the argument in defense of our campaign that became my campaign. And the magistrates could not sustain the prosecutions. One of the ones that had been arrested, one of the ones that had been arrested was, of course, a former SDP Liberal councillor, Shojad Mia. Shojad Mia was full of poison, ingratitude. He went in the court while I was outside demonstrating. And I was demonstrating for him. He was so poisonous that he never spoke to me about this, never said thank you. Now, I come from a background that is unparalleled to any of them, all of them put together. I don't need them to thank me. It is in my blood. I do this as part of my birth duty, obligation My great grandfather did. The Vedh Shah did. Thousands of people were helped by him. Thousands. So I don't need any of these people. But it shows the limitation of these corrupt individuals. How could they reconcile their corruption, their jealousy, their petty minded stupidity by later claiming that they were campaigning for the victims, whoever the victims were? Alok বিশ্বাস is a known fraudster, criminal, as is Bhajan Chatterjee, another known fraudster and criminal. These two criminals, together with Patrick Kodikara, the shitbag, who has passed away now 2 years or so, these criminals set up a so called Hackney Asian Association. They did fuck all because they didn't actually represent the Asian people in Hackney. These three criminals were among the crooks that set up business on the back of the campaign, general campaign that I was doing for justice for Altab Ali and Ishaq Ali. Never in my whole life have I needed somebody to give me money to do the campaign, and I have not received any money. I have not sought any money. But these criminals in Hackney discredited the idea of the Hackney name of Hackney people, Hackney Asians, and they were caught and they were disbanded, and the money that they were from various council like organization or sources, the money was switched off. So when we hear that the criminal Alok বিশ্বাস is the writer of a book about Brick Lane about Altab Ali, the legitimate question arises, what the fuck does he have to say in the fucking book? He's a spy and he's a crook. He doesn't care. He doesn't understand. And there is nothing that he has done. There is absolutely no evidence of Alok বিশ্বাস or Bhajan Chatterjee or Kodikara doing anything in Hackney against racism. And Kodikara paraded himself as a social worker. The biggest prize he craved was to become a social worker appointed in Tower Hamlets so that he could become the king and he could tell the Silotis what a grand leader he was. Crook from India. Freak Dondi, who apparently wrote this number of books, including The East End at Your Feet. These criminals always, these criminals always surfaced when our community actively organized to any extent. I was fighting against police racism for years before Altab Ali was murdered. There was no sign of these criminals. I was fighting on my own with the police and arguing and all the rest of it. The only sign there was of a number of the now deceased James Ryan, who was a member of the Socialist at that time, early 1970s. James Ryan has died. And James Ryan, the last time I saw him was in 1977 in Lewisham when we did the big rally against racists and National Front and the police. 1977. That was a year before Altab Ali was murdered. There was nobody else from Tower Hamlets, not from the Bangladeshi community, not from the Hackney Asians in Lewisham. The rally was, the big demonstration was at Deptford. So the campaign for the justice for Esmoth Ali and Watir Ali is, of course, the part and parcel of the same campaign, which is still unfinished campaign for justice for Altab Ali, because the murderers were not really held to account. Justice for Mr. Tosir Ali, justice for Mr. Ishaq Ali. Remember these? I mean, when was the last time that the convicted fraudster Mahi Ferdaus Jalil of Channel Slave, Channel S, when did he do any of these campaigns? Never. So how does this fat man from Bath, what's his name? This Chaudhary who came from Bath and became the chair of the Channel Slaves, he says that they campaigned against Crossrail. Fuck them, the liars. Shits. They're worse than liars and shits. They are the ones who are obstructing the community's campaign, mobilization of the community to demand justice. And demanding justice is not just about demanding justice against the racists, but also demanding justice by establishing accountability by the people who make the claims and they make the careers for themselves. I cannot claim to know any of their parents, their fathers. So I can't say call them Gulamor Fuain. I can call them Gulam Fuain. Gulam Fuainte কোন জায়গাত কোন দিন কোন ক্যারিয়ার তারা স্যাক্রিফাইস করছেন অন্য মানুষের বালার লাগি কমিউনিটির বালার লাগি লেট দেম শো দিস 13 বছর 13-14 বছরের ফুয়া 15 বছরের ফুয়া না যখন মারা গেল আরো বাংলাদেশি ফুয়াইতে মারলা তারে আমি গেলাম টাওয়ার আমলেস কাউন্সিল তখন ওহিদ আহমদ কমিউনিটি সেফটি ক্যাবিনেট মেম্বার ফর লুৎফুর রহমান এখন আমার দেখিয়া ওহিদ আহমদ লুকাইতো কিলা লুকাইবার জায়গা নাই মাতিতেও পারে না আর বাগিতেও পারে না হোয়াট কমিউনিটি সেফটি আমিও কইলাম যে আমরা ফুয়াইতে মারইন তোমরা কাউন্সিল হিসাবে তোমরা কোনো দায়িত্ব নাইনি I am still waiting for Ohid Ahmad 10 years later, and I have not received a reply. And so on. চ্যানেল এসর জলিল দুইবার গেছে জেল না এখন যে দুইবার ফ্রড করিয়া হে জেল যায় হে বাদ আর বালা বেশ কম কিতা বুঝবো আর হে হইল কি লুৎফুর রহমানের প্রচারক আর লুৎফুর রহমান লুকিয়ে তার সার্টিফিকেট দেওয়া। Where is the certificate mentioning where is the certificate? Let's find the certificate that Lutfur Rahman issued for Zolil Mahi Ferdaus Jalil. Now there is this item by the Daily Express. Daily Express has got this item on 8th of February 2014, and it says anger as London mayor gives glowing court reference for convicted insurance fraudster. One of Britain's most controversial mayors provided a glowing court reference yesterday to a convicted insurance fraudster who was then sentenced to 3 years in jail for money laundering. Lutfur Rahman, the directly elected mayor of Tower Hamlets Council in East London, praised Mohammed Ferdaus's instrumental role in promoting Britain's Bangladeshi community just minutes before he, Ferdaus, was sent to prison for the second time in 6 years. So they can read this online item on the internet. It's by Ted Jury, Fasta Shullominito time, Tuesday the 16th of February, 18th of February 2014. Lutfur Rahman, the directly elected mayor of Tower Hamlets Council in East London, praised Mohammed Ferdaus's instrumental role in promoting Britain's Bangladeshi community just minutes before Ferdaus was sent to prison for the second time in 6 years. Lutfur Rahman's letter of praise made reference to Ferdaus's work with Channel S, an influential satellite television station for British Bangladeshis, and which has been warned by Ofcom for broadcasting biased coverage of the mayor's policies. Ferdaus is the channel's founder and until recently was a regular presenter. Ferdaus interviewed Lutfur Rahman, an independent who was expelled from the Labour Party in 2010, on the channel as recently as last November, that is November 2013. Despite a previous jail sentence for insurance fraud, Firdaus has been named as one of the most powerful Bangladeshis in Britain. However, a judge at Southern Crown Court, I'll read that again. However, a judge at Sadak Crown Court yesterday said another custodial sentence was the only possible outcome for Firdaus's latest crime, laundering the money from 1.9 million crash for cash insurance scam. Now, crash for cash needs to be explained. What they did was they organized a number of cars, brand new cars or fairly new cars, to crash into one another. Once crashed, they are destroyed, written off, and the insurance money is claimed. Firdaus, at that time there is 40, that was in 2014. So it was 9 years ago. Who is also known as Mahi Jalil, grinned as his sentence was read out and waved at supporters in the public gallery, saying thank you and see you soon. He, Jalil, helped flush funds generated by a team of fraudsters led by his brother, Shamsul Haq, 26. Shamsul Haq, together with five other men, had already been sentenced to a total of more than 12 years in prison. More than 120 bogus insurance claims for luxury motors, including Mercedes, Jaguars, and BMWs, were engineered by Shamsul Haq through his company Motor Alliance. Cars were trashed at crash for cash drinking parties at Shamsul Haq's garage in Tottenham, North London. The court heard. The gang rammed the vehicles into each other, blocking out the noise with blaring music before finishing the job with baseball bats. Because once they damaged the cars by crashing one car into another, they then hit the cars to do further damage by hitting the cars with baseball bats. Between November 2005 and October 2008, a series of London based accident management firms were used as a front to hide their activities. They also persuaded other drivers to provide their license details to back up the insurance claims in return for small amounts of cash. The firm raked in around 1.17 million in profits from the scam, which was unearthed after police raided Motor Alliance and found 64 files relating to insurance claims in the boot of a silver Mercedes. Firdaus had a background role in the firm and was involved in the scam between July 19, 2006 to October 31, 2008. The media mogul tried to pin the blame on his innocent middle brother, Abdul, and maintained his innocence on the day he was due to stand trial in July last year. He was jailed for 18 months in 2008 for conspiracy to defraud in respect of an almost identical earlier insurance scam between 2002 to 2003. Firdaus was on bail awaiting trial at the time he became embroiled in the later fraud. Can you believe that? I mean, he was so confident that while he was on bail in connection with another trial, he committed a new se- series of frauds. For those that suffered most traumatic stress disorder, according to his claims, that is, after being kidnapped at gunpoint outside his television station offices in Walthamstow, East London, issued with a £250,000 ransom demand. When he refused to pay his assailants, according to his claim, they tortured him, hanging him upside down and pouring boiling water on his head before threatening to rape his daughter. He continues to endure psychological difficulties as a result of the ordeal in May 2011, shortly after he returned from a pilgrimage to Mecca, the court heard. This is according to the statement he made to court. But sentencing, Judge Anthony Pitt said the proceeds of the fraud Motor Alliance received was something a little over 1 million. Payments from the proceeds of the fraud were put into your account or accounts controlled by you, that is, Firdaus Jalil. The proceeds of the fraud received by you was £500,000. It wasn't proceeds which you suspected might be proceeds of fraud, but of course, which you knew were the proceeds of fraud. You are a highly intelligent man. There is no doubt about that. And I have read a lot of good things about you. Of course, you have suffered post traumatic stress disorder and anxiety and depression. But money laundering is a serious offense. You were close to the source of the fraud and you dishonestly handled £500,000. This is the magistrate or the judge talking to Mahi Firdaus Jalil. The judges continued in the TED jury report on the Daily Express website. This offending by you is so serious that even given the lapse of in time, largely for which you are responsible, an immediate custodial sentence of some length must be passed. Unquote. Then Ted Jury says, shaven headed and wearing a black jacket, grey sweater, and jeans. My Firdaus Jalil, I am adding a paraphrasing because I'm reading a script that may not be obviously understandable to people viewing this. So I'm adding a descriptive paraphrasing part. My Firdaus Jalil bit his nails and held his head in his hands as he sat in the glass enclosed dock during the hearing. But he appeared cheerful as the sentence was passed, thanking the judge and giving a thumbs up to supporters in the packed public gallery. Now, how was it packed and by who? Ted Jury doesn't say. He grinned and waved, telling them thank you and see you soon as he was led down to the cells. Firdaus was also banned from being a director for 10 years. Now, that is 2014. So, it's just 1 year, I think, that remains before he can resume becoming a director again. Mark Milkman Smith, at that time as QC, now it would be KC, King's Counsel, defending Firdaus said of his kidnapping. The fact that he suffered post traumatic stress disorder is hardly surprising given the physical and mental disorder. Sorry, I'll read that again. The fact that he suffered post traumatic stress disorder is hardly surprising given the physical and mental ordeal he was subjected to. What happened to him in May 2011 was a very, very significant and life changing experience. This is a changed man. I most certainly hoped that he was, but he wasn't. I'll come to that in a second. Firdaus received a glowing references, including the one from Lutfur Rahman, who described him as playing an instrumental role in promoting the Bangladeshi community through Channel S. Nobody knows what Channel S is, but I call it Channel Slave. Firdaus has a real desire to help others. That is what Lutfur Rahman said. And is a keen philanthropist, in particular supporting those affected by natural disasters. The court heard. Well, this may be the barrister, Milkman Smith. Milkman, not. I'll correct the name Millican, not Milkman. Millican Smith. He has a selflessness which one doesn't naturally associate with an individual concerned with personal greed. Millican Smith added. Firdaus from Brantwood, Essex, admitted possessing criminal property. Shamsulok, his brother of Maida Vale, West London, was given 5 years in October 2011 after Shamsulok admitted conspiracy to defraud between November 13, 2005 and October 16, 2008. Shamsulok's lieutenant, Rasul Yusuf, 33, was jailed for 4 years, while Shalim Mia, 29, received 2 years. And Halimur Rashid, 28, was jailed for 15 months. Nazrul Islam Muhammad Rahman, 32, and Naveed Akhtar, 40, both of whom were named in bogus claims made by Shamsulok's gang, were given 12 month sentences suspended for 12 months. Paul Ellis, 37, who pleaded guilty to providing 6 driving licenses to Shamsulok, was given a 6 month sentence, suspended for 12 months. Ellis and Rahman were ordered to carry out 100 and 140 hours of unpaid work, respectively. Today, that is the day that this item has been posted by Ted Jury. Councillor Peter Golds, the leader of the Conservative opposition in Tower Hamlets Council, called for a council investigation into the town hall's links with Channel S. The council and the mayor declined to comment. There is no suggestion that Lutfur Rahman had any involvement in the insurance or money laundering scam. Well, that was Ted Jury reporting online. Well, as I have accessed this particular copy online, I'll go back to the origin. I'm running up there. I'm scrolling up to get to the actual date of the post I have been reading from. This is the time. This time is 5:16 p.m. Tuesday, 18th of February 2014 by Ted Jury. The Ted Jury, of course, is spelled Jeory. Ted Jury is no longer employed by the Express. That was 9 years ago. So, what I have read that about is that there is no evidence, there is absolutely no evidence in anything that Lutfur Rahman officially has signed in the capacity while being incumbent in the post as elected mayor. that shows that either he or his so called cabinet or his colleagues have any significant recognition for people like Mr. Esmoth Ali, people like Mr. Watir Ali, people like Mr. Tasir Ali, people like Mr. Ishaq Ali. The only difference would be about Altab Ali because it becomes a different in terms of the amount of time and the attention that it has been given. So, in order to reflect benefit on the reflected glory of the combined collective name of the community in responding to the racist attacks and murder of Altab Ali, Luthurman is likely to be among the list of people who have expressed recognition of Altab Ali. But that is nothing to do with actual dedication to justice, the cause for justice for the victims of the racist attacks. So, as I said, this is the extended reference we are making to Mr. Esmoth Ali and Mr. Watir Ali, and we shall be continuing. And in doing the reference, I am also updating on the behavior of the likes of Lutfur Rahman and the utter complicity by Rushnara Ali with the status quo. Rushnara Ali is as corrupt, as dishonest as is Afsana Begum. And I shall be talking about both of them. Rushnara Ali has lied while pretending on the outside that she is and has been against Lutfur Rahman's opportunistic, dishonest behavior. Rushnara Ali has lied in misleading, in making misleading statements about the role she has played as a constituency member of parliament. So, this is the summary of what I have made available to Labour Party officials at the time. What I can say is that the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, various times the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets has been found. On the one hand, it is divided between racists and Bangladeshis, and on the other, it is divided among people with basic abilities and skills and competence, and people without basic abilities and skills and competence. So, the entire collection of currently in place elected Bangladeshi named councillors are being hereby given the opportunity to explain publicly what they have done to support the campaign for justice for the Bangladeshi victims of racist murders and attacks on the one hand, and for the Bangladeshi victims of Bangladeshi criminals, like the boy from Langdon Park School who was murdered in 2013. We shall be continuing. And the other point I have to make is this: this is an independent campaign for justice, objectively defined internationally, objectively, legally, lawfully. We are not funded by anyone, and we do not seek funding from anyone, never have done, and never shall seek any funding from anyone. We do this for ethical, moral purposes, pure justice. In the culture of the Bangladeshi community that is mainly Muslim in this context, we do this as part of ibadat. And we do this in believing in the Holy Quran, which has in the Surah Al Isra, Innal batila kana zahuka. Innal batila kana zahuka. And I shall go back to that one and do a bit of elaboration on that one.
الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا.
So this is the promise. This is the promise that God makes. وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Falsehood. Innal batila kana zahuqa. Falsehood has perished and truth has arrived, and truth shall prevail. So anyone who thinks that they have said something for the cause of truthfulness in support of the campaign that we, the Khoodeelaar campaign, the Committee for Bangladeshis Rights in the UK, and Muhammad Haq, doing this since I started the campaign in 1973 in defending the community. If they have actually done the same type of campaign, let them come out. And if they have any knowledge of why Lutfur Rahman appointed Ali Chaudhry to tell lies to me on a regular basis for several years. Ali Chaudhry lied to me on behalf of Lutfur Rahman for several years. And Lutfur Rahman lied to me. Lutfur Rahman lied to me on the Friday, the 29th of October 2010, barely a week after he got slotted in as the elected mayor. How long is it? Coming up to 14 years. I've been waiting. Lutfur Rahman has not kept his word for 14 years. So we say to the people watching this that do not believe in the propaganda that is issued from time to time, including by Lutfur Rahman giving certificate to Mahi Firdaus Jalil, that he has contributed to the Bangladeshi community through his channel. He has indeed contributed to the disreputation of the community, disinformation to the community, and he has done that by telling lies. I appeared on the slot called Mahi, Reality with Mahi, in 2011, not long before he was attacked by these individuals. I don't know anything about this, but not long before this attack, I was misled into believing in good faith that I would be talking about the issue of doing Bangladesh based politics among the Bangladeshis in the United Kingdom. When I arrived there, I found myself co appearing with some other people, which I had no idea would be happening, because these individuals represented Awami League, other league, whatever. And they had no idea as to the morality, the ethics. And instead of conducting the discussion in accordance with objective values and truth, this was allowed to become a party based exchange. But that was the only time I appeared there. And I don't believe that the comments that I made, which I repeat in summary as follows, that I don't believe that Bangladeshis in the United Kingdom, whether they carry Bangladeshi passports or not, doesn't matter. People of Bangladeshi origin, let's say. The Bangladeshi people should not be doing Bangladeshi based politics in the United Kingdom. Why? I answered the question by saying that in Bangladesh, every political party is corrupt. Now, I have been saying this long before Bangladesh itself as a state appeared. And I'm on the record. I started my journalism exactly 60 years ago on the Jugaberi language paper weekly and its English counterpart called Eastern Herald in 1963, owned by Aminur Chaudhuri. And I had a historic encounter with Aminur Chaudhuri few years later in 1966 when I was visiting Silot, and I challenged him in front of a witness because Aminur Chaudhuri was praised as coming from a influential background, all the rest of it. And I told him to his face, I said, I challenge you. And the details of my challenge did not become necessary because he sent me of the following issue. So I've been doing this kind of campaign now for 60 years, and I didn't ask him to give me money, and he didn't offer, and I would not have accepted even if he offered. For several years, I wrote for free, for the Eastern Herald and the Jugaberi. There is nobody like me with that record anywhere. So for Mahi Jalil to distort my name and call me Abdul Haq is an audacity beyond endurance. And this convicted criminal will have to apologize to me or withdraw the audacity and his co criminals that present the stupid slave news. They come from another planet. Each one of them is a lying gulam, mental slave, betraying the community, misrepresenting the community. And I say to ordinary people who are watching this that we shall, inshallah, God willing, secure appropriate justice for Mr. Esmoth Ali, Mr. Tosir Ali, Mr. Watir Ali, Mr. Ishaq Ali, and appropriate compensation for all of them. Whatever it takes, we shall be continuing. Inshallah. This is 18-12 hours GMT, and the length of this particular edition has been 1 hour 31 minutes. So we shall be bringing an end to this particular edition.